Welcome to the village hidden in the stories. I'm your guide, Alkage. And I hope you all like the video I have for you today. But before that we have to get into some other things. We don't have any shoutouts as no comments have come in. But I would like to say I am testing to see if using the I voice from the start changes my view count in any way. Other than that, this series was hard to make as I was cutting close with only a few hours to spare. But you all have seen the thumbnail. So you know that this is what if Izuku had the Chaos Emeralds. I hope you like the series this week. Please comment on these videos so I can get feedback and video ideas. Please also like the video and share with others if you can. And subscribe to help me grow my channel. Without further ado, let's get into this amazingly crafted what if. Part 1. Chaos Control. Izuku awoke with a dream pulling at his mind. Like a wisp in the wind, the sudden memory he had that night was gone. The boy, smaller than most his age, sat up groggily as the light shined from his window. He wiped his eyes and looked at the corners of his room. Such a place was kinda clean for a 6-year-old. But either way, his room was scattered with toys, items, figures, posters. All All Might themed just the way he liked it. The boy looked up to that man and even more wanted to be just like him at one point in his life. But for some reason a boy's dreams had to be crushed before he even turned 5. See, in this world people had quirks. Special powers used in everyday life. Or if you were like All Might, you used them to save people and stop villains. The young boy Izuku had no quirk. No super strength. No fire control. Nothing that could give him his deepest wish to become a hero. But that would all change soon. The boy got up from his bed and grabbed his favorite All Might figure. The one thing that still gave him joy besides his mother. He then grabbed his backpack. As it was the end of the weekend. Friday had come and gone so fast, as it always did for the Greenette. Speaking of Greenette. The boy was freckled with light skin and dark green hair mixing with black hair. Another thing was his abnormally green eyes. Even in a world like this, it seemed almost weird for the boy to have everything on him be green. The small child ran out his room, putting on the best smile he could before leaving. He ran to the small outside area of his room before running to the living room, which was right across from the kitchen. His mom had been making breakfast for him and he only watched her with a sort of happiness. This was another part of his life untouched by the problem of not having a quirk. A part of his life that he loved the most. If he could, he would protect his mother with all he had. And no matter what he wanted, he would still do at least that for her. These were the types of things a child his age weren't meant to be thinking of. The boy would gladly give his life to be a hero or to protect his mother. And yet people like Bakugo gained an ability, a power, a quirk, that would and eventually could level cities in a matter of seconds. But he could only think about that for a bit. It was time to start his daily routine. The boy ran beside his mother, bouncing up and down with a sort of giddiness. "Hey Mom," Izuku said with a almost blinding smile towards his mother. The woman had green hair, but it wasn't mixed with black. And she also didn't have freckles. Although the boy had his mom's round face, most of his traits came from his father, who he hadn't seen ever since he turned 4. The woman just looked down to the small child with a smile. Then she went back to making the food. "Hello Izuku. Are you ready for the day?" she asked, keeping up her small smile with genuine joy at seeing her son happy. If only she knew what happened every school day. Izuku showed his backpack with even more fake happiness as he showed his backpack to his mother. "Yeah," he said happily. "All packed and ready." Aiko just gave another small smile at this before moving food to a plate and then placing it on a table. Izuku quickly scurried to the table before starting to eat. "Make sure to eat all your food. It's gonna be a short day, so there won't be serving any lunch." Izuku gave a quick nod before he continued eating. After a few minutes Izuku had finished. He then got up from his seat where Aiko would be able to take him to school. The car drive to the small daycare-like place wasn't long at all. And it was almost as if a place like this was made such a way on purpose. As the two stopped at the front entrance of the place, Izuku moved quickly to get off his seatbelt. "Izu," came his mother's voice, stopping his sudden want of leaving so quickly. "Yes, Mom." The boy quickly responded, seemingly wanting to get out of the car as soon as possible. as if he wanted something to start and end in an instant. Which he did. But his mother didn't need to know that. "I love you, Izu," she said, a bit of protectiveness in her voice. "I love you too, Mom." He responded with just a smile. "You know you can't tell me anything. Right? It doesn't matter what it is." "Okay, Mom." He responded even quicker before opening the door and jumping out. He then ran towards the school, not seeing his mother's saddened look. And she didn't see the smile on his face fade. "Does she know I'm being bullied?" he thought to himself as he began to move to get to his class. He looked down at the floor, not noticing anyone who looked at him. No. He thought, reassuring his mom wasn't worried about him. If she had known, she would have said something to me. No need to worry her about it anyway. Izuku kept walking, eventually making his way towards his class. The day had gone by very fast. And it was around the time Izuku had recess. The greenet sat in a lone swing thinking on how he was going to avoid Bakugo today. His friend-turned-bully had always treated him as a lesser person ever since it was found out he had no quirk. The school also had found this out and subtly refused to help Izuku in any way. Bakugo Katsuki was a kid around the same age as Izuku. A blonde, spiky-haired kid. With red eyes. And an explosion quirk. Katsuki would bully the boy for being quirkless. The boy was also praised for having such a promising quirk. Izuku grit his teeth at remembering how Bakugo was praised for everything he did. The ground he stood on was practically worshipped. As if he was the exact model for a hero. Izuku then looked up from his swings. Something had gotten him out of his usual thoughts. "Hey, you quirkless loser. You can't touch my swing." These words were accented by a small bomb not too far away from where Izuku was sitting. The voice was small, like a child should be, but more confident than ever. It came from the boy. The same boy Izuku had held some anger towards. "So you better get off," said Bakugo as he caused another explosion in his hand. He held a sinister grin. Smoke came from the boy's hands as he looked towards another small child who was on the slide. Along with the two friends. More like minions. Bakugo walked up the slide with no problem to approach the kid that dared to get on his place. "Didn't I tell you to get off?" Bakugo said with rage and amusement. The kid backed up a bit before shaking in fear. "What? You not gonna say anything?" The boy didn't respond and he tried to move away. Although he was stopped as soon as he tried backing up by Katsuki's minions. "Well. You quirkless loser. I guess I have to teach you a lesson," Katsuki said as he laughed a bit before his so-called friends started to laugh with him. Bakugo moved up his arm ready to attack with his small explosions. The young blonde's hand roared down with small crackles before it seemed to be right above the scared boy's face. Everyone had thought Bakugo had hit the boy, but instead Izuku had somehow gotten in front of the boy. The greenet had used his smarts to send himself flying from the swing onto the slide, landing between Bakugo and the boy. The small explosion went across Izuku's face as Bakugo stared with annoyance. Such annoyance seemed unfit for a kid like the boy. Yet somehow it still fit for him. "Deku," he said with the same annoyance his face was conveying. Bakugo minions looked surprised as they looked towards Izuku. Quickly the scared boy behind the greenet got free before running away from the slide and going somewhere else on the playground. It was quiet for a bit as Bakugo just stared at Izuku, who had been rubbing the burn mark on his cheek. "You idiot," said Bakugo as he raged a bit while his cronies just watched. "Why do you think you can save people? You're quirkless. So you need to stay in a worthless loser's place." The words hurt Izuku a bit, but it wasn't nothing the blonde hadn't already said to him. "Or do I need to teach you again?" Bakugo said with a grin as he let off explosions in his right hand. This didn't work to scare the greenet, but it did make him look down at wanting to fight. He hadn't been a fighter. He had known that when he first found out he was quirkless. He had known this as his mind grew instead of his strength. He was the smartest in the class. At one point he thought that would make people like him, but instead it just made Bakugo treat him worse. So he found the best way to get left alone was to be insignificant. But he knew in his heart it wasn't right to let someone suffer when you can do something. That's not what Izuku wanted to be. "Katsuki," Izuku said, finally realizing he had been going against what he believed in. This surprised Bakugo and his minions as they hadn't seen this from the Greenet before. Sure, he had a hero's heart and tried to stop them sometimes, but to call out the blonde was unheard of. "What?" said Bakugo as he started to growl a bit, trying to scare the boy like he did so many times before. Izuku stayed unfazed by the act and kept pushing on. "I won't let you." Izuku paused as Bakugo's anger grew. The boy then shifted as he raised both his fists. This only served to make Bakugo even more angry, as his cronies even seemed scared. "I won't let you hurt more kids," Izuku said, shaking but having some resolve. He had decided this was the day he would fight against Bakugo. Always. However, this time it didn't end well for him. Time skip. Izuku walked from the school with burns, cuts, marks, bruises, and more. It was the worst beating he had taken from Bakugo in years. "It's what I get for trying to go against Bakugo," he thought as he looked at the sidewalk. The boy moved down the trail he had in his mind. He knew his way home. And this is the one day he would walk by himself so his mother wouldn't have to see him hurt like this. The boy kept up his pace. "Maybe Bakugo is right. I'm worthless," he thought out loud, not caring if anyone heard him. "No," Izuku said with more confidence, realizing all the times he had been putting himself down. He was tired of being pushed around and watching people get pushed around. He knew it was wrong and he wouldn't just stand by. "I can be a hero," he told himself, trying to wipe away the tears he had when he was beaten by Bakugo. But then Izuku had to stop in his tracks as he heard a beep from a car. The Greenet turned around because of the sound and quickly began to wish he had kept walking. The sound came from his mother's car. The woman seemed to have some worry and a bit of anger as she looked at Izuku, who was clearly hurt. The boy, ashamed, walked to his mom's car. He then got in. As soon as he was buckled in, Aiko drove off, not saying a word to the boy. Izuku didn't speak either, as he didn't want to start the conversation. He felt if he didn't say a word she would just leave it alone. He knew this was a stupid thing to think. But he really didn't want to talk about what happened, even if he knew it would hurt him in the end. Gratefully, Aiko spoke first after giving a sigh. "Izuku," she said sternly, keeping her gaze straight ahead as she drove. "What happened at school?" Izuku didn't say a word. "Izuku," she yelled, making the Greenet jump in a bit of fear. He had never seen his mother act like this. To him it seemed like she was angry at him, which almost made tears fall out his eyes. Aika's eyes softened at this, seeing how her baby boy reacted to the pressure of her gaze. She gave a short sigh before looking back in the mirror, then to the lead again. "Izuku, I'm not mad at you," she said calmly and soothingly. "But I can't help you through this if you don't at least tell me what is going on." Izuku stopped his tears as he looked at his mother before looking outside. "Someone was being bullied in school, so I helped stop them. Only." Izuku grimaced a bit as the burns and cuts on him flared up a bit. Aiko didn't respond for a bit. She had been going through what to do in her mind. Out of Izuku's knowledge, she had been seeing small burn marks on him every day. She didn't know what to do, as when she tried to deal with it in the school they said they didn't know anything and couldn't help if it wasn't happening in class. Which she knew was bullshit, but she didn't have the money to send Izuku to a different school. She had hoped eventually her son would have stopped getting hurt, but now she felt as if she should have done something from the start. Which she knows she should have done now. As she thought on this, the younger Greenet looked out from the car. They had been driving for a few minutes. He could tell as they were nowhere near their apartment. This meant they were going somewhere. But he didn't know any place that they would go. Maybe the hospital, he thought with a questioning look to the scenery. What he saw was trees and road. No cars. Just a path that kept going straight, as if it was only possible to go up and stare there. This made Izuku turn back to his mother with interest for what was happening. "Mom, where are we going?" he asked, very much interested in the answer. "The place I should have taken you when I found out you were quirkless," she said back, vaguely, kind of freaking out the boy. It made him think he was going to lose his mother, as a 6-year-old would always overthink something like this. He didn't even have the courage to ask her again, as he just expected her to throw him out in response. The two finally arrived to what seemed like a temple. It was a wooden one, moderately big but not too big to be noticed by the city Izuku and Aiko lived in. As the two got out, Izuku just wondered when he would have to say bye to his mother. Only Aiko bent down in front of the boy. She had a almost reminiscent look as she turned to the building and then to her son. She wasn't telling the boy something and he knew it. He started to second guess what he thought about her abandoning him and just decided to wait for some sort of answer. "Okay, Izuku," Aiko said as she tried to calm herself a bit. She wanted to deal with the boy's school situation later so she could help her son in a different way. "I know. You have been getting hurt from being quirkless. But there are a lot of things that our family has kept secret. From Japan and the world. Something that I hoped I wouldn't have to come back to and wouldn't need to share with anyone." She paused and turned to the temple. Izuku just looked in the same direction with a questioning look, not knowing what his mother was spouting on about. Could she understand a single thing? Why would his mother ever be hiding something? And why from the world? It just didn't make sense. "You still want to be a hero, don't you?" asked the woman, stopping the boy's thoughts. He turned back his mother quickly and looked into her eyes. They were a hard, warm and protective stare. Of a mother that wants the best for her son. Either the best serious look he could muster, he spoke back to respond. "Yes. I still want to be a hero." Aiko gave a smile at this, happy at least that was still true for the boy. She then looked back to the temple. "Good. There is a reason why you are quirkless, Izuku. I should have done this when you had turned 4. But I wanted to leave this part of our family behind. As something to forget." "What?" Izuku asked quickly as he was still a bit confused by all that was happening. "Our family," she said with a bit of mirth, remembering how she was treated because of her rejection of what she was about to tell Izuku. "We were the protectors of something ancient. A power even stronger than quirks." Izuku looked to his mom once more, then back to the temple as he couldn't find anywhere else to stare at. This was all still too confusing and weird. But the best he could, he paid attention to his mother. "What is it?" he asked with a confused look. "It's beyond that door," she responded as quick as he asked. "You have to open it." Izuku swallowed a large gulp of this. He didn't fully understand what his mom was talking about. But for as long as he had consciousness, he had known. That power is what makes the strong. And without it, the world would break you. And quirks were that power. But now he didn't fully believe that. Even if he didn't fully understand. He could feel something in his body. His mind. No. His soul. Telling him this was it. He could be a hero. His mother seemed to believe it. Or else she wouldn't have taken him here. It would have just stayed a secret forever. Whatever it was anyway. Izuku deciding he wasn't going to wait anymore and at the door. This surprised Aiko and she reached out for him. This was until she realized she couldn't stop him from reaching for his hopes and dreams. She knew that's what this was. And she knew that she had to help him grow. The boy quickly appeared in front of the door with bated breath after running like that at his age. He then reached out for the door. The door then completely burst from some force. Dust filled the air. Smoke clashed with it as well. And the door flew past the trees, the temple, and the car. A glow of power came from the dust and smoke, and Izuku could only subtly make out the glow. But as the glow began to brighten, the dust began to clear. Once the dust was fully gone, the glow was bright. Almost as bright as the sun. And it began to move to the surprise of the boy. And then it rushed past him before completely flowing around him. From what he could make out, 7 emeralds float around him with power and energy unknown. And it only seemed to intensify as he turned back to his mother. The woman smiled at the sight. The green it had enveloped in a motion of air and color that looked beautiful. And from this alone she could tell he would be a hero. Time skip. 8 years. Izuku sat atop a roof with a serious look in his eye. He had been staring down at a crime happening in the middle of the day. The greenet took his notebook and started to write down things. He had seemed to be analyzing the quirks in the struggle. A man with a transformation-type quirk had found their way into a busy part of town. The man was standing on the railway atop some smaller buildings as taller ones stood above it. There was even some destruction caused by the man, but it was merely accidental. From what Izuku heard, he had known the man was trying to cause panic because of a failed robbery he committed. Of course, he only had a little bit of time before he had to stop the man. But that didn't matter much yet. He had done this so many times that he could do it in an instant. Although the crowd that was growing was getting bigger. The boy had a black uniform on him, a yellow backpack and green-topped hair. He would be spotted almost instantly in the daytime. And the worst thing about his look was the 7 emeralds that formed a necklace around his neck. The emeralds were diamond shape and small. Basically like any other diamonds in a necklace. The problem was the energy around them that seemed to connect them to his neck. Although he could use this thing with his shirt, it would be impossible if he wanted to use them. The teen gave a sigh at this before grabbing 2 of the small emeralds with one hand. The pieces of jewelry came off easily from the line of energy they were on. The boy himself held a red and green emerald. Not too long after he had received the things had he figured out what each had done. Although he still needed some work with some. The green emerald stopped in alter time. Blue allowed him to shift materials that aren't organic, besides himself, into any shape and size as long as he can imagine it, and the emerald has enough power. Although the power thing kinda went for all the emeralds. If he used them too much they would stop working until they recharge on their own. The red one allowed him to boost anything's speed, defense or power. Although this ability stacked the boosts, it was dependent on how many a certain thing could handle. And he could only boost one at a time. And eventually, even if he were able to stack boost, the would go away at some point. The yellow one allows him to put things in a pocket dimension and make portals. The next was white, which allowed him to absorb and store energy for use. He could shift, control and shape it or send it out. Although this was only if he absorbed the energy. The cyan emerald allowed him to heal and disintegrate things. And finally the purple one allowed him some form of gravity control. Although he knew there was more to the purple one. All of these were simple powers in Izuku's mind. But the fact he hadn't seen other quirks at the emerald's power that weren't already a top hero was telling. Thinking on the abilities that the emeralds gave, he closed his book. That damn man is gonna kill everyone. And no heroes have arrived yet. Izuku gave a sigh before putting the book in his backpack. Putting his emeralds back on his chair of energy around his neck. As well as grabbing the yellow emerald with his right hand. The yellow emerald became larger and more diamond-like. The once small jewel became big enough for only the tips of his fingers to reach the head of it. Chaos control. He muttered as the emerald created a yellow portal in response. The green it then reached in the portal, pulling out a scarf his mom had made for him years ago. With a simple pull, the scarf wrapped around his neck, covering the bottom half of his face, as well as his energy pulsing necklace. The portal soon closed, and the emerald went back to its small form before the boy had grabbed the green one. He had no goal in being seen. But the amount of time he could stop time right now wasn't enough for him to not be seen. The green emerald grew in the same fashion as the yellow one did. Izuku then grabbed the red emerald in his left hand with more serious look. His sudden calm at the destruction being the only thing on his face. Nothing seemed to get past the gaze before he gave a yell. Chaos. Control. He roared as the green emerald responded quickly. Time had come to a stop at this. Nothing seemed to move about the boy. The green it stood up, his gaze not changing at all as his body shifted. Soon the green emerald ended up back around the boy's neck before the red one had grown in size like the yellow one before. Another roar of chaos control came from his mouth. The red emerald glowed before the green it jumped from his spot. As he jumped from the building, he had cleared the distance in an instant with speed and power. Although he only had boosted his strength. Inexperienced in fighting, the boy raised his fist quickly. Readying for the backlash of a one-hit KO, Izuku braced himself quickly. With the red emerald's glow, he grit his teeth and hit the villain in the chest. While it seemed to have no effect on the villain, it did affect the boy's arm. It was blown apart from the attack. He may have been strong enough to handle one boost. However, he didn't have enough strength to handle the backlash of using an attack. Once time began again, the villain was blown back by a powerful force. And then he was knocked down and knocked out as Izuku just landed on the tracks. The crowd couldn't see him on the tracks as he didn't stand tall enough. As well as the fact they were more focused on the villain who just fainted out of nowhere. What happened? Screamed most. Did a hero get him? Said others as Izuku started to heal his arm and run out of the area of. He ran as fast as he could so he could be unseen. The day was still young and the boy could only find another building to rest at top of. The boy quickly found himself on said building holding his arm close. He couldn't find a way to stop the pain even after his arm had been healed. I should have found a better way to defeat the big guy. He thought a bit mad at himself and the fact he might worry his mother when he gets home. Izuku put the red emerald back around his neck as it turned small before he sat down by the edge of the building. The city's crime rates weren't as high as they were years ago. But they have done a leap in how many there were a day. Up to 10 crimes a day in 1 square mile. As a vigilante he was considered a villain as well. But he didn't have time to be chased by heroes. Actually he had to outrun a lot of new heroes lately. Kamui Woods was one of them. And the man practically was the main hero coming after him on a daily. The Greenet was actually surprised the man didn't show up today. This thought was stopped when the boy heard a noise behind him. The sounds of branches moving as well as the crunches of leaves accented by a sudden landing. The boy turned around to see what had made the sound. He had already had a guess of what it was. As he held his arm he looked closely to what was behind him and unsurprised he spoke. "Hey, Kamui," Izuku said as he looked at the tree-themed man. As a hero the man had a wood-crafted helmet that covered his mouth as well as his whole head. Along the brown was a blue cloth that stretched through the whole suit. Accented by wood-like boots as well as wood-like gloves. "Vigilante. That was you down there, wasn't it?" the hero said as Izuku looked to the giant who was still down on the train. The boy then looked back to Kamui with a bit of boredom and tenseness. He could tell this was one of the days the man wanted to capture him and get him to the cops. He didn't feel like fighting the man. Especially with how hurt he was from the attack he threw. It was his fault for using such an attack that gave so much backlash in the first place. The Greenet looked towards the man closely before deciding to give a response. "Yeah? Didn't think you would show up this time," the boy said with a bit of pain. Izuku then shifted his whole body to be back on the building as his emeralds gave a chaotic glow. "You saved a lot of people. It would have gone wrong if you had started to attack random people," the man said as Izuku only looked to him. The boy could just feel the conflicted feelings in the man's eyes. He knew what he had to do but it was clear he didn't want to. But it didn't seem like the man was thinking on it all too much either. "Let me guess," said the boy with no hint of emotion trying to keep himself ready for anything. "It's that time of the week, isn't it? You need to take me in." The hero looked away for a second before looking back with a bit more readiness. "You know it's my job. I'm a hero." He paused a bit seemingly as ready as Izuku. "Vigilantism is illegal. No matter what way I put it it's always going to end up with us being like this." The Greenet just turned away. "Well, for what it's worth. I'm sorry but I got to take you in." Izuku shifted again only this time to push his mask up. He had helped a wood-like man for a while now. And yet he was still able to escape the hero of his town. He wasn't getting taken in any time soon. And no matter what he wasn't going to worry his mom. He never wanted to worry her again. He promised himself that much. So he had to get out of this situation quick. Only problem was he didn't have another time stopping him. He could only use that move so many times a day. Mainly one time if he wanted the time stop to be long. It was a good thing he had other ways to escape. Then necklace around the Greenest neck started to float. It repositioned itself to put the blue emerald in the front. Allowing the boy to quickly grab it in his left hand. Izuku let the emerald grow in his hand and then looked down. "You're not going to be able to catch me," the boy said as his eyes shifted around. "I will. This time," Kamui Wood said as he started to step closer to the boy ready to take him in. Instead the Greenet roared like he had did before. Chaos control. This shifted the roof that he had been standing on. Making an opening through it as well as an opening below that one. This repeated to allow the boy to fall all the way down as he grabbed his red emerald. And boosted his defense. Eventually Izuku fell all the way through the building surprising the hero who was just left at the top. The boy finally landed from his fall and stormed from the building getting outside as fast as he could. As he ran from the building Kamui looked down from his spot. "Damn it vigilante." The hero jumped down in chase as Izuku kept going to try and get away. The boy's necklace began to glow. All of the emeralds floated around him ready to be used when needed. The blue one got placed in his left hand. He then looked behind him quickly before he began to shift the ground below him to create a path into the air. A small error of chaos control made this so as the boy got airborne. He also had made sure to shift and move the ground so it would move from its lay, leaving no way to follow him. Although Kamui was confused at first, he found it easy to follow. Using his wood quirk, he shifted his body to make a branch-like grapple on the side of the wall. He then moved quickly to try and get to Izuku. Only the boy was mocking too quickly with plans to escape. The boy hurled right as he held the blue emerald up in his left hand. The floating object began to shift a bit before he decided to jump onto a building, Kamui not too far behind. "You have to stop," said the hero as he ran on the side of the building the boy was on. "No, I don't," said Izuku before he jumped to the next building and grabbed a hold of the yellow emerald. Having remembered all he had seen of the vigilante's quirk, Kamui swung up to the next building. And right when Izuku created a portal, the hero rushed in after him. Once going through the portal, the scene had changed. The two were now falling through the air at a fast rate. While Kamui seemed shocked by where they were sent, Izuku just shifted his body to allow him to land earlier. Soon the hero went after him as well. Seeing this as possibly his only chance at getting hold of the greenet, the man stretched out his wood hand again, making the branches of a tree. However, this version of them were more thick as he began to aim it at Izuku, who was still going down at a fast rate. Izuku then put his yellow emerald back before pulling out the cyan emerald. The wind rushed past his face as he had a focused look. He waited for a moment for Kamui to attack. And as the man raised up his tree-like hand, he launched the thing directly near the greenet. The grapple-like tree attack raced down at the boy. And as it came down, Izuku already had what to do in mind. The boy swiftly shifted his whole body to face the attack mid-air. And then he held out the cyan emerald. With one utter under his breath, the tree attack that was once so close to him started to disintegrate. It traveled through the bark and completely turned it to dust until Kamui had to cut it off to save his arm. He had an annoyed look as the boy went back looking for a good place to land while keeping his emerald close. He still didn't want to attack. That wasn't not something he was going to choose to do. No matter what, he wasn't someone to attack when it's not needed. Especially with the emerald's powers. "See ya later, Kamui. I got a thing to do somewhere. Gang violence is always an option. Stay safe." Izuku finally caught himself on a new building, finally losing Kamui as he ran on rooftops. "Finally," the boy said with a sigh before keeping up his step. "I almost thought I would never lose him." This was the last thing the boy could get out, as the last jump he did wasn't to a building. Instead, it was into a lady who had been the size of a giant. Even more so than the guy the boy had taken down starting all of this. The lady had a white suit on that matched her size, as she just gave a kind smile at stopping the runaway as hung on for dear life. "Hey Vigilante. Why do you all call me that?" the boy said, looking up to the giant face of the woman as he tried to think ahead. Izuku looked down to what he was hanging on and realized with a blush what he was holding. The boy was holding onto the woman's sizable chest, which was basically a hill at the size alone. Only problem with his predicament was the fact if he let go he would die. "Looks like I caught you," the woman said as she cured her face with her right hand. "I got our dear friend Vigilante." With a blush, Izuku quickly responded. "Again. Why do you all call me that?" The woman just giggled as the boy still looked at her from his spot. "You young teens are so easy to tease." The greenet powdered a bit under his mask before he remembered he was still on the run. "Sorry, Mount Lady. Can't stay. Especially not when Kamui is chasing me." The woman then tilted her head at this with some confusion. "Doesn't he do that every week?" she asked as she looked down to the greenet. Izuku just sighed at this, remembering how many times he had to escape the man before looking back up to the woman. "Yeah. But it seems like he really wants to catch me this time." This made the woman's confused look turn into an amused one. "Well, I won't tell him where you are. Thanks," he said with a thankful look, as he was actually glad for the woman helping him. It was hard not to attack Kamui when escaping. He really needed to figure out how to do that a bit easier actually. "I got something to tell you." the woman said as the Greenita attention had been on the crowd that was forming below them. Most likely because of Mount Lady. Izuku quickly looked back to the woman to tell her what was going on. Could you tell me? In a less crowded area? He asked as his mask barely hid his blush and concern at the fact of there being a mob focused on the pro hero. As well as the fact he was still grappling on her chest for dear life. This made the pro realize the fact that a mob had formed under the two. Only more focused on Mount Lady for obvious reasons. Seeing this, the lady had put Izuku back on the building and leaped towards it before turning to her normal size. Her suit doing the same as well. As she landed, she did some sort of stereotypical hero pose before walking towards the Greenit. Well, now that we don't have eyes on us, what do you want to do? The woman said seductively as she batted her eyes towards the boy. What? Izuku sputtered, not being able to get a word out at hearing this. Until the blonde woman in front of him started to laugh right in front of him, making him remember how she loved to tease him. The poor boy had fallen for the joke again like he always did. It was the one thing he didn't like about the woman when working with her. She always felt it fun to mess with him because he was young. You know. I'm starting to wonder, when will that stop being funny to you? The boy asked as he crossed his arms annoyed. The woman in front of him could barely keep herself together as she was holding her upper body up by her knees. She still wheezed a bit before calming down to give the Greenetta answer. She wheezed again with joy. It will never stop being funny. This made her start to laugh again at the boy's expense as she just couldn't contain herself. The boy was just easy to mess with, and it was always funny when he got all nerdy and embarrassed. She wouldn't trade the vigilante for any other pro hero, even he was just a kid. So, we gonna talk about what you needed to tell me? Or are you just gonna keep laughing? Mount Lady held a finger up at this as she kept laughing but was clearly trying to calm herself. After a few more minutes of laughter, she stopped and was able to keep calm but with a slight smile. Which annoyed Izuku just as much as the laughing. Sorry, she said after a long wheeze. After this, she finally stood up straight, still having a smug look. So, I needed to tell you about a little something the heroes are putting together for you. Izuku tilted his head before speaking. He never really ever talked to any other heroes besides Mount Lady and Kamui. How? And why? Would some random group of heroes ever put something together for him? It was a bit suspicious. No, it's not a trap, the woman said after she saw the man's look. Izuku deadpanned at this, not expecting to be that readable. Damn. It's that obvious? He asked, a bit concerned. Even with a mask I can read you, kid. She responded quickly with a smirk before waving off the experience. Anyway, like I said, it's not a trap for you. Nizu and a couple of heroes want to enroll you into UA. She paused, making Izuku give her a questioning look as she held out an envelope to the Greenit. A full ride. The boy tilted his head a bit, not expecting this from Nizu. He knew about the rat bear dog thing with the UA way higher than any human, even with a quirk. The principal of UA. And a maniac who had no idea how dangerous he really was. Or he knew and he just liked to use that danger to mess with people. Izuku then grabbed the envelope with another serious look under his mask. Are you sure they want me to go there? I mean, UA is a school a lot of top heroes come out of. Wouldn't it ruin their reputation letting a vigilante in the school? He asked with a worried look before looking back to the mail he got from the woman. Mount Lady gave a shrug before placing her hands on her hips, accenting her curves. I don't know. I never went to Taue. But I say, if they really want you, you at least talk to Nizu first. Izuku gave a small nod before looking to the envelope one last time before putting it in his backpack. I guess I will, the boy said before looking to a farther part in the city. Trees started to sprout from the buildings, and the boy only knew one person who did that sort of thing. This made the boy's eyes widen before looking back to Mount Lady. The woman just smiled at him, understanding what was going on. I got to go, he said quickly, running to the edge of the building they were on. No problem. When you get in UA, don't become a stick in the mud, she said jokingly as the boy looked back and forth to the incoming trees and the hero. I still don't know if I'm going Taue, he said quickly. Trust me. I know you are going to that hero school, she said with a smirk. The boy just shook his head and jumped off of the building and disappearing from the woman. Not long after did Kamui Woods jump onto the building she was still on. The man stopped as he landed next to Mount Lady. Hey, he said quickly, looking a bit winded. Of course she knew why this was, but she wouldn't say anything as she held a blank face. Have you seen Vigilante? He asked, holding himself up while laying on a tree he created. Nope, she said quickly before deciding to leave the building. Back with the great Vigilante, Izuku had decided to make his way towards Sue to figure out what exactly was his plan for his future. He ran from building to building, finally landing on a building near Thue High School. Izuku gave a small sigh before eyeing an open window near the top of big school building. The greenet launched himself into the side of the building, using the blue emerald to make stairs for his break-in. He jumped into the window. The dark place was illuminated by the boy's glowing emeralds. The boy walked around a bit as he tried to find a door. He moved his hand towards the wall and grasped something. He pulled quickly before the lights lit up the room. He then looked around, realizing he was in the principal's office. There was 2 sofas across from each other and a table in the middle. Behind both of them were shelves filled with books, almost overflowing with them. The 2 chairs also led to a desk which was obviously for the principal of the school, as well as a chair that was turned to the window Izuku came through. This made Izuku shiver a bit as he realized something was sitting in the chair. But before he could say anything, the chair turned to him, showing its occupant. Hello, Mr. Midoriya, said the thing, which looked like a white rat bear thing with a scar around the area of its left eye. It was also in a suit for some reason. It took Izuku a few seconds to realize that the small child-sized animal had said his family name. This quickly made his eyes widen as soon as the wheels in his head started to turn. This ultimately led to the boy sighing before walking towards the desk, knowing there was no point to keep standing next to the light switch. Hello, Nizu, Izuku said with some respect. Can I ask how you figured out my identity? May I? The man quickly said with a smile as his paw picked up a teacup. He sipped before eyeing Izuku expectantly. The boy then gave a sigh before speaking again. May I? He said with a bit of annoyance but still with an underlying respect for the man. Ask how you figured out my identity. Well, the animal started as he put the tea down with a cute smile. Mr. Midoriya, it wasn't hard figuring out your personality. Your hair is dark green mixed with black. Not many people have that trait. It only took my algorithm a few minutes to find your school identification. And that let me see everything I needed to. Nizu took another sip of his tea before looking to Izuku, who seemed a bit weirded out by the fact the principal had his eye on him. Anyway, the man continued, putting down the teacup again. Why did you break into my office? Hearing this, Izuku quickly pulled out the envelope he got from Mount Lady and put it on the desk. The man-like animal looked towards the envelope and gained a frown. Don't tell me you don't want to enroll into my school, Mr. Midoriya, I must say. Izuku quickly put his hands up and shook them with a bit of embarrassment. Wait, no, that's not it, he said frantically before calming himself with a sigh. His arms went back to his side before he decided to continue. I actually had to ask you a few questions before I decide anything. Nizu gave a released sigh before showing a smile like before and holding up his teacup. Great. I will answer any questions you have to the best of my abilities. Nizu then gave a psychotic laugh which freaked out Izuku. Anyway, the greenet said in a weary tone. Why would you and the heroes who work here just give me this? He asked, still a bit confused on that. He didn't feel as if he earned his way in like he had wanted to. It almost felt like cheating in a way, and he didn't want to get into a school like that. Nizu smiled a bit more before putting down his tea. Well, Midoriya, let me ask this. The man paused a bit before looking directly into Izuku's eyes, as if he was trying to directly see into the boy's mind. How many times have you helped the pro heroes with no recognition for your troubles? And while heroes don't save people for the fame, and vigilantism is illegal, it doesn't mean me and the other heroes in this school don't want to thank you. A small silence filled the office after this was said. Izuku could only give a small nod before deciding to go to his next question quickly. What class will I be in if I accept? The boy said consideringly. Well, Nizu started. Let's say the hero course class 1A. Izuku gave a second nod before thinking on his options. Getting a free ride into class 1A definitely sounded like cheating to him. And he didn't like that one bit. But it would really help if he didn't have to prepare for some stupid test. And even he would love to go to A. But the way he would get in was not like this. Izuku took up the scarf that was like a mask that stretched around his face. This let Nizu see the greenet in all his glory. With resolve, the big started to speak after grabbing the envelope. I won't be taking your free ride, said the big as he ripped up the envelope, making Nizu frown. But then he continued. It wouldn't be right. I'll get in. On my own terms, the boy said with a grin. This made Nizu grin as well, mirroring the greenet a bit as the animal started to laugh. Although this time it didn't unnerve the boy. Well, the Mr. Midoriya. I hope to see you soon. Yua will love to have you in its halls. Izuku gave a tilt to his head before jumping out from the window behind the man. Time skip. The green had laid his head down on a hard desk, seemingly asleep in class after a long day. He already knew his mother was going to talk to him about his vigilante stunts, but he was already planning to stop that. Especially if he was going to UA. A school like that wouldn't need him to keep going out late at night to be a hero. Even if he wanted to help out a bit. But in his class another thing was stirring as the boy slept. Okay, class, the teacher said as he finally moved to his desk after lunch. Like last year around this time we had some career aptitude test. Most groans in boredom at this as they had been through this sort of thing before. And they really didn't want to deal with it. But our greenet still held his head down, not paying any attention. Enough with the groans. The man quickly responded, showing his authority. We need to do this sort of thing to see which high school you will be going to. The man stopped a bit, looking to his students as the held groans in size, as well as some bored looks as some held their face on their hand. This made him give a small sigh before looking back at the papers intuitively, only for him to throw the papers as he spun to the whiteboard. But I know. You all want to be heroes, he said with a smile as the class got excited at this. They didn't expect such a display and most even started using their quirks to show how they would be heroes. Some were weird, while others looked like could do some real good as heroes. But there were only two he didn't show what they could do. Obviously. The first was Izuku himself. But the other was someone the boy would find familiar. Not too long ago the boy had to transfer from his school to this one with no chance of making friends. Which he didn't all care for, but it was like no one knew the boy. Although back to the boy in question. His platinum blonde hair was wild and spiky, while his uniform was not well kept or put together. His shoes were placed along his desk as he leaned back. And he held a glint in his red eyes as he gave a cocky grin. You should know. I'm the only one from this class that will even become a real hero, he said before he gave a chuckle. The rest of you would be lucky to be a bunch of busted D-listers. This made the other students look at him with anger, although they wouldn't do a thing if the boy was to confront them. Oh, shut up. You know it's true, he said condescendingly as he stood up. I aced all the mock tests. I'm the only one here with a quirk versatile enough to go pro. And after that, I'll become the richest hero of all time. After this the boy gave a laugh as explosions went off in his hand. Hearing all of this, the teacher looked to a paper that landed on his desk after he threw them. He then looked back to the boy who had made a speech in his class with a small smile. Somewhat proud of the boy. That's right, said the man before he paused. Then he looked back to the boy. Katsuki Bakugo. You're applying to UA. Everyone started to murmur. Most were speaking how hard it was to get into that type of hero school. Meanwhile, Bakugo had a bigger grin at this, loving the fact that they were all talking about him. He believed without a doubt that he would get in the school. Oh, and our transfer Izuku Midoriya is applying to UA as well. This made everything pause as everyone turned to the sleeping greenet. Although what the man said did piss off Bakugo a bit. But, the boy sputtered a bit as he began to growl. He then turned around to Izuku, having remembered that name finally. It had been all those years ago. The boy remembered that Izuku was in his elementary school. As a quirkless loser who didn't quit. Quirkless. It rang in his head again. And again. And then he started to give a bigger than ever before speaking. So, the quirkless loser has transferred into my class. The boy said, getting no response from Izuku as he just laid there. What, you quirkless bastard? The blonde yelled with more anger as he approached the boy's desk. Too scared to lift your head up. The murmurs started again. Does he really think he can be a hero? Said someone with a whisper. I bet he won't even get into a normal course, let alone the hero one. Another said, trying to make sure people heard him, as Bakugo began to get more angry at the boy who seemed to ignore him. If any of us tried, we wouldn't even get anywhere close to in. What makes that green-haired idiot think he can? The murmurs kept going on as Bakugo had had enough of being ignored by the boy. It took a few more minutes for class to end, and that was when Bakugo decided to make his move. The teacher was gone, so he had to go in quick. Most of the class was still in their seats. So as the blonde grinned, he decided to make sure they all knew that they couldn't stand against him. Bakugo walked over to the sleeping greenet, sparking attention towards him. He kept going as the class only watched, some actually wanting the greenet to pay for thinking he could get into UA. Hey, damn nerd. The blonde said with a low anger underlined by intent. Wake up. He yelled before raising up his arm and letting it fly down to Izuku's head. Explosions went off in the blonde's palms, ready for an attack. Bakugo's arm was coming down fast. Although in the last moments, it was stopped by Izuku's hand. The greenet looked up in confusion. The boy saw the blonde above him as said blonde struggled to get his hand away from him. Deku. Get your damn hand off me. Bakugo roared with anger. Bakugo. Asked Izuku groggily as he gave a yawn. Unhand me. Said Bakugo again as he tried to pull away but just couldn't. Damn it. The blonde thought as the class had been watching him. As if he wasn't worthy of being a hero. To him, Izuku should be the one being looked at like that, not him. It just didn't make sense to the blonde. Yae. Just leave me be. Izuku said before getting up as he began to look closely at the blonde. This was before the boy let go of him as a glow came from under his uniform. Bakugo grasped his arm before looking towards Izuku with a frown. Okay, damn nerd. When did you get strong, you quirkless loser? He said, calming himself down. Izuku paid no mind to Bakugo as he just looked to the other students who was watching him. While not very confident in his younger ages, the greenet had learned and grown a lot since he first found his emeralds. He had no point in being a punching bag. Hey, I'm talking to you. The blonde yelled, getting Izuku's attention again. Well, you're stupid if you think I want to talk with you. Responded the greenet as he tilted his head. As everyone heard this, they started to snicker. Not expecting the greenet to stand up to the blonde. It was unexpected as no one but the boy would ever do such a thing. Anyway, I got another class to get to. You ever want to talk to me about me going to UA? Just say so. If you're just gonna try and bully me though, I'll beat you. These were the last words the boy said before he left and walked to leave the classroom. This left Bakugo to think to himself as he was left shocked to be standing alone. The other students had already left as well. And no one was there to hear the blonde's roar of anger. Izuku's other classes went by fast. The boy barely did a thing and still had the highest grades. He had been mainly thinking on how he soul trained for the 10 months he had to get into UA. No matter what, he needed to be prepared. It was time for him to start using his emeralds to their full potential. There was so much he didn't know about the things. And he felt as if there was things to their powers that he didn't know. Sure, he made portals and pocket dimensions, but he always theorized how he could shift the portal's properties. Thinking on this more, Izuku began to walk home from his school with a bored expression. Eventually, as he found himself in more thoughts, he walked under a bridge. He kept his pace but didn't notice something creeping up behind him. The sounds of sludge moving quickly up and around didn't alert him. The stench of such a thing didn't alert him either. Quickly this sludge began to form AO from the sewer as it began to turn and shift. Shift to the point it looked humanoid. Until it started to flow out again, turning into almost an abstract shape. It shifted even more, growing behind the greenet and slowly approaching him. This continued until the boy had stopped his stride. The boy then turned to the sludge. Seeing the thing clearly, it had a face in there. However, it only had eyes and a mouth. Although this just made Izuku give a bored sigh. Let me guess. The boy said, surprising the sludge that was obviously just a man with some sort of sludge quirk. With a look of surprise, the sludge stopped moving as Izuku continued to speak. You are going to attack me? He said with an annoyed look before grabbing a hold of the necklace hidden under his uniform. Well, you. Shut up, kid. The sludge roared in confusion. Man, you really should have chosen someone else to target today, Izuku said before showing the necklace of energy and emeralds that floated around his neck. Let's see. Trap you. Or complete obliterate you, the boy said before pausing and looking to the blue and red jewels that floated around him. The sludge gave a confident laugh in response before settling himself. He went back to shifting around his sludge-like body as he began to speak. You think that you can just dismiss me, boy? The monster-like quirk user said confidently as Izuku finally grabbed an emerald. The blue one grew as he commanded it to, which surprised the villain a bit before he dismissed it. Hey, you better listen, kid. I can kill you right here. No answer. Okay. You asked for it, the man said before giving a roar. The sludge-like man rushed in quickly as his body of sludge began to curve around Izuku. This would have been the end for our hero if he didn't say 2 words. Chaos. Control. He roared as he made the bridge collapse with his words. Blue energy invisible to the naked eye began to shift the shape of the rubble as it grew into a new form. This new form closed around the sludge villain before he could even lay a single drop on Izuku. And quickly the rubble turned into a compressed orb. Izuku just looked to the orb with boredom before picking it up and pulling out a notebook. He wrote down some things about the sludge villain's quirk with a smile before pocketing the orb and walking away. Unknown to him, he had been watched by a man with a sizable grin. Izuku kept his stride light before having made his way towards his home. He wasn't expecting another interruption before he would finally get some rest. And he also had hoped that his mom had made some katsudon for him. It would be a great day if this was the case. Well, besides running from Kamui, Bakugo getting on his nerves, and getting stopped by not even a D-list villain. Other than that, katsudon would make this day perfect for the greenet. But this would be the start of his training. After beating the sludge villain and turning him in, the greenet began to hone his abilities for the 10 months of training. He had even found a beach to use and train in that time. He even got permitted to use his emeralds while cleaning the place. In that time, the boy strengthened his body, his mind, his emeralds, and his knowledge on how to use them as well. And he was ready for the test that was to come. Izuku stood in a section of UA testing grounds. A small city-like landscape. Well, small by UA standards. That they were going to take the practical exam in. An exam that he would pass to get into the school. It would be just another step in saving people. The boy stood in a teal jumpsuit and some red shoes. Standing next to him was a friend he made while training. And is also the person who had helped him with cleaning up the beach for his training. A pink-haired, pink-skinned, black eyes similar to All Might and yellow pupils. The girl was named Mina Shido. And she was the girl that Izuku helped All Might find. All Might was back there that day, watching him as he defeated the sludge villain. Izuku found out All Might's quirk was able to be passed off, as well as the fact the hero had been weakened and was looking for a successor. Originally, the man asked Izuku to be his successor, but instead the greenet denied such a thing and helped the man meet Mina from his old school before he switched schools. She had been a close friend before he had to switch, and actually she was the one that made him want to be a vigilante. Another thing about the girl was the fact she was extremely bubbly. And it was actually better than being around people who thought he was quirkless. But to be honest, anything was better than that. So Izuku, are you going all out? The greenet turned to the cute girl before giving a kind smile. To most besides his mother and Mina, the boy was lazy and a nerd who loved heroes. But really, the boy was a kind soul who could get serious in an instant. As well as the fact he was smarter and more calculating than most his age, even ones with quirks. This was mainly from doing vigilante work. Izuku, chimed the girl, trying to get the boy's attention. This worked and made the greenet realize he was in his own world. The boy, embarrassed by this, scratched the back of his head. Sorry about that, Mina. Was in my own world, the boy said sheepishly, causing the pinkett to giggle. It's fine, Izu, the girl said before shifting a bit. So what's your answer? Are you going all out? The girl gave a grin as she closed her eyes, waiting for her answer. Another thing that people didn't know about the boy was, even in his confidence, he was still shy and didn't like to boast. But he knew he had to give some answer. And he knew he was going to try his all with it too. Of course I'm going all out, he said, still scratching the back of his head before gaining his confidence. It's what I have to do. Just another step to become a hero. Even if it's a bit corrupted, he muttered, making sure no one heard him as he thought about who heroes were made in this society. Then he turned to Mina, about to ask the same question. What about you? Are you gonna use your new power? The boy said, obviously talking about the new quirk she had gained from All Might, with a questioning look. Mina just stopped her grin, going into a thinking pose before speaking her mind. I don't think so. Unless I really need it, I don't want to use it, said the girl as she stood up straight, making the boy give a smile. Well, I guess that makes us rivals, said Izuku, giving a smirk. What happened to being shy about your abilities? The girl quickly asked, mimicking Izuku's smirk. You know I'm not shy. I just don't like to show off much, said Izuku as he wiped his nose with his index finger as his fist was on his side. This was the last thing the greenet got out before the gates leading to the giant arena opened. A moment of silence stretched out the crowd that Izuku finally noticed was around them. The crowd was the other contestants that wanted to become students of UA. Although Izuku didn't care all that much about that one bit. With the gate having been opened, Izuku turned a bit serious before leaping through it. He left his friend as well as the other potential students in the dust. The boy's emerald necklace began to glow and spin around his neck before detaching and flowing to his left arm. All of the emeralds grew to their true sizes before the boy grabbed a hold of one, keeping up his speed. He ran with intent as he heard yells of "wait" from the group who was left behind him, only for some announcer to express that everyone must start with no countdown. Using the emeralds as a weapon, he whipped the first into the air. Being attached to each other by energy, the other emeralds soon followed. And quickly Izuku whipped them back down. The emeralds came down as Izuku began to remember what this test was about. The test was all about gathering points. The greenet had to defeat and destroy many robots that gave points and were numbered from 1 to 3, each giving their respective number of points, as well as going up in difficulty to destroy as the numbers got higher. But even then, this excluded the 0-pointer, which was the strongest and hardest to defeat. But other than that, Izuku was sure he would be able to rip through these robots. The mass of emeralds came down to slash a 1-pointer robot, sawing through it. This was the same fate to a 3-pointer that tried to jump on Izuku. The emeralds quickly came back to the greenet, but instead of moving from his spot, he just completely disappeared. The boy reappeared in the sky as his emeralds went back to their small form. He then held out his left arm with a serious look before controlling them with precision. The emeralds started to shoot out like bullets into multiple robots before they came back to the boy to repeatedly shoot out. The greenet kept this going, raining out destruction to robots in his own area. This destruction roared on as the emeralds didn't once stop. And Izuku kept his gaze on every robot that he wanted to destroy. After a few minutes, he had already destroyed many and decided to have a break. The mass chaos stopped and he was able to land on a prop building. Seems this is harder than I originally thought. Maybe I could help out, Mo, Izuku said before he started to stretch his arms as his emeralds went to their normal size. He then jumped off the building in a motion to start helping out. In the sky, the boy saw at least 3 people who were about to be hit by robots. He moved quickly and sent out his emeralds in another whip-like motion. The energy tie jewelry wrapped around a robot before it was yanked from the ground by Izuku. It was then slammed into another robot. He then did that to a few more robots before landing, making sure he didn't destroy the robots so he didn't take the night before students' points. He then ran off, not letting anyone see him, although he was watched by heroes who had been watching him in a room with cameras. Izuku did this same thing for a while, helping anyone who needed it, only to stop when he felt the ground beneath him shaking. He saw people stumbling and running away from something. He couldn't tell what, but he guessed it must have been the zero-pointer, the very thing the announcer said they should avoid. Izuku ran from the rumbling quickly and helped anyone who stumbled get away. Izuku held a serious look to the zero-pointer. He had had it with the thing after a few minutes of helping maybe students get away, looking to the running applicants, and then to the robot. He had decided to end this quickly, like he had did so many times as a vigilante. The emeralds that were under the Greenita control flowed around him with a powerful glow. Wind raged around the Greenita as he stared at the robot with a smirk. Chaos control, the boy shouted, causing everyone to turn to him, but instead he just disappeared. To everyone, he had teleported to the top of the robot. But really the Greenit had stopped time and stood on the robot's head, with another order of chaos control. He destroyed the head, making it shift into a boulder. This made the thing fall, and as the Greenit stood above, hit the others, only saw Hero.